A few technical difficulties this morning. This afternoon. Just bear with me, and we'll get started. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Branding for the Future. Building a brand that lasts. Where today we will explore what it means to build a brand that lasts throughout this current season and beyond the season that we are currently in. Um, if any of you have ever attended any workshops I have done in the past, you know that I've been talking a lot about marketing your ministry and what that means in regards to using graphics, creating a logo, using different social media outlets to really market your vision and tell people what you are all about. So today I really want to focus on the why behind your brand. And my goal by the end of this session is to help you see what I see, and also to help you see what others are seeing and perhaps what you may have already figured out about your church, about your organization, and your ministry. So before we get started, let me just give you a little bit about myself. I am B. Lauren. I am a Jersey girl, South Jersey to be specific, born and raised in Jersey, proud wife, minister, and a proud millennial. And I am the founder and owner of LB Designs and Consulting, LLC. And I work with creatives, I work with entrepreneurs, small business owners, and churches, helping them to brand themselves and to market themselves. And I have to say that I have a soft spot for churches because it's kind of how I got started in this space. So to give you just a little bit of background, I was fresh out of college and went back to my home church. And one of the things I did there was I started a youth ministry. And what I wanted to do was use all the things that I had learned in school and being involved in student ministry while I was away to kind of really impact the youth at my church. And one thing I realized is that because I wanted to do some things that I felt were out of the box, some things that were different, I needed a vehicle to communicate a new vision to those that I will be working with. The youth were excited to get on board, but certainly wanted to involve the whole congregation and let them know what they would be seeing from us. And so that's how I kind of get started in this graphic design. And from there, I kind of expanded as people began to see the work I was doing and started working with different churches. And so one thing I began to realize is that the church should be at the forefront of branding and marketing. Really anchor that belief in Matthew 28, the Great Commission, where Jesus tells us to go into all the world and make disciples. And I feel like we should be at the forefront of that. And what we see a lot of times is that different organizations, different companies, and different industries are the ones dominating this space. And I believe we own the space, and it's one of the best ways we can get the message, the good news out. All right, so let's jump into it. What are we going to talk about during this session? We're going to walk you through branding in the church. I'll give you a little bit of history about where we have as a church traditionally stood as it relates to branding and marketing. We're going to talk about what is your brand, how do we get there, how do we build a brand that lasts, and also branding on a budget, right? Because it costs. It costs to invest in your marketing and your branding. And then I'll stop and we'll open it up for questions. So, as I said again, my goal by the end of this session is to get you thinking about what your brand conveys, and also to give you some tools to start building a brand that outlasts the current season that we are in. All right, so let's jump into it. So, I want to mention the word season as it relates to building a brand that lasts the current state of the way things are, the current conditions in our society. And I mention that because I'm sure that most of you notice that the church has experienced a paradigm shift when it comes to branding, right? And what I found in my experience of working with churches is that they fall on two extreme areas. And on one side, we have you see somebody's church in an X, where most people aren't looking to brand. You know, in some cases, I've dealt with churches that really don't feel like it's needed. It's a traditional mindset that we shouldn't look flashy, or that we don't have to invest in graphics or anything, that simply preaching the word and preaching the gospel is enough. I certainly believe that, like Matthew 5:16 says, that we are to let our lights shine so that men may see our good works and glorify our Father who are in heaven. And so branding is a way that we do that. But we have found that a lot of churches tend to feel like it's not needed. And then in some ways, we find them in the, moving towards the middle, where they say, okay, it's needed, but we're not really putting that much energy to it. And that's where you find sometimes the flyers made in Microsoft Word, just kind of not really pushing the envelope on how great a brand can be. So that's one extreme. Then the other extreme is we find churches that have who have invested in some of their branding, invested in their marketing, and that's the churches where we find the really nice, cool flyers, right? We find that their branding is on point. They're constantly sharing their services. You go to their page, things look nice. They have a very nice different pictures that they're sharing. They're the flashy kind of things that you're seeing on their social media pages and things. And so those are the two extremes that we fall on. But what I want you to think about underneath that is, do we really know anything about who they are? We may see the nice flyers, but do we know anything about them other than that they're having another service, other than the fact that they're running another revival? And if you were in the opening general session, you heard LaKesha talk about, when we think about this aspect of discipleship, we're thinking about people who are looking for something, right? Who are searching for answers, searching for a place to belong. And so what happens when they go to your social media site? What happens when they go to your website and all they see is a service or a flyer, and that's all they had to land on? That doesn't really help create disciples, right? That doesn't really help us engage with those who are lost, those who are hurting. And so that's why I really want us to start thinking about a brand as something that is bigger than graphics, something that is bigger than the optics and the images that we put out there, something that is bigger than the logo that we may display on our social media outlets. Church, it's time to really think about what's behind all of the images that we display. This is critical because organizations that stand the test of times are those that are well established in who they are and yet still see the need to be innovative. And so gone is the idea that, okay, if this is a new season of technology, the church can't withstand that. The church can't go on in that. We just need to wait this pandemic out and wait for everything to pass over. No, gone are those times. The church does have a foundation, a rich history. And so it is up to us to continue and begin to push the envelope and embrace technological advances. And so that's why I'm so proud that you are here today, because that means that you have invested in and taken things to the next level. So let's begin to think about what's behind those images, what's behind those graphics. What is a brand? A brand is a set of expectations, memories, stories, and relationships that last. Taken together, these account for a consumer's decision to choose your product over another. And that's a quote by Seth Goodwin. Building your brand is about packaging all of who you are and presenting it to the world. That's important because a brand, oftentimes we're trained to think that a brand is your logo. Brand is not your logo. It's not your tagline. It's not your website. It's not even the products or services that you offer. It's not about having a fancy graphic. Instead, it's about what's behind the videos and what's behind the graphics and what message do we ultimately want these assets of our brand. The logos, the flyers are assets of your brand, but your brand is what you ultimately want to convey to people. And all of these things, the logos, the things that we have, the pictures, the graphics, they can be an expression of your brand. They're the asset. They're the collateral pieces of your brand, but it is not your brand. Again, your brand is your set of expectations, memories. It states a clear mission and then follows through with the promise that you're giving people. So, what is it that your church is trying to say to someone? That's where your brand lies. All right, let's go on. On the screen before you, you'll see several logos that represent a brand. Now, here's where I want you to think about something. Type in the chat box. Tell me, I want to know what your favorite brand is. It may not be on the screen here, but tell me what your favorite brand is. Let's see what we get in the chat box. Apple. Carrie said Apple. That's good. Apple is actually one of my favorites. And it's not even, what's interesting about the Apple's brand is for years I listened to people complain about Apple. There's this war between Apple and Android. And, we know Apple users are definitely getting into the kingdom. Not sure about Androids. I'm just kidding. But, there was such a war about this, people, it still is. It's still going on. Even when we get down to talking about Clubhouse, the fact that it hasn't been made available to Android users. But for years, I boycotted Apple because, Apple, certainly Android platforms are more user-friendly in some ways. But as I began to really lean into Apple products, I realized, okay, this really speaks to the experience that I want to have and what they really sell me on, right? Because their products are expensive, but what they really sell me on is their packaging. Listen, I love a good packaging. Like, I feel like I'm opening up a toy that, they really think through, the user experience, what I'm going to experience when I get their product. See, Brandon said those McDonald's, those fries, yes, when they come out hot and put that salt on them, yes, yes. And, it's interesting you choose McDonald's because think about McDonald's, right? They offer a promise to you. They also talk about how many they've served throughout the years. But think about the McDonald's brand. And I don't know about you, but oftentimes, depending on the franchise you go to, you're going to get a different experience there. And so beyond their logo, we know they want to make you smile, but beyond their logo, some of us aren't smiling, right? When we get those fries, yes, we're smiling, but think about the customer service experience and how you have interacted with their staff. Think about the instances where your order may not have been correct. And then also think about too the different deals they offer, how affordable they make their food. Sometimes when you're in a pinch and in a bind, you can run to get something quick on a budget, right? But when you see their logo, you don't just say, "Oh, that's the McDonald's logo." You immediately start associating with all the experiences that you've had with them throughout the years, right? Whether they were good, whether they were bad. Each franchise, every employee is a part of that experience, that McDonald's experience. And Carrie said, I can easily use Apple. I actually use Android for my phone, but nothing else. I hear you there. So these logos represent how they want you to experience them, right? Let's take a look at church logos. These are pretty common, right? Most of you have probably seen these at some point or another. The African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church. Some of you tapped into the Potter's House, the Southern Baptist Convention, Young Leaders Conference. That's really a millennial movement that's really been taken off in the last few years. But all of these present an experience, something to think about. When you look at these logos, you think not only thinking about the experience you have, you're remembering any events you've gone to. You're thinking about the people that represent these, right? The figureheads, the members that are a part of these organizations. Not only are you thinking about that, but you're also thinking about how they have throughout the years managed conflict, how they've responded to injustices, how they responded to what's going on in this season. I don't know about you, but if you all remember around the time where George Floyd was murdered, um, within that week span, even with Brown and Taylor, we were getting, I don't know about you, but I was bombarded with email messages with all these companies coming out with their stance on where they stood on social justice and Black Lives Matter movement. They were all sending out messages because they know what the times we're living in, regardless of how good their product was, it was about how they were going to respond in that moment to let you know whether or not they cared about your humanity. Because they know that the user experience matters. They know that if we don't care about you as a human, we're in this climate now where you will get canceled, where they're not going to buy their products. So here, even if they really don't care about Black lives, they were sending messages to make sure, to make you think that they did. And so that is all a part of your brand. And when we think about building a brand that lasts, we have to think about the experiences that we give to people, the experiences that we curate, all the different touch points that we have. Are we meeting people at their need? Are we hearing their cries? Are we considering their humanity? Those are the things that are behind your symbols. When you think of the Amazon Church, you're thinking of the Freedom Church. Well, what does that mean? In what ways have we granted freedom? What ways have we fought for freedom? And so think about that as you're whenever you go back to your logo, or whenever you think about putting out a graphic, think about what people are going to gravitate to, or what are they going to think about when they see your symbols, because that's what graphics are. They're symbols to convey a message. So let's move on. Another popular brand, right? Starbucks. Now, some of you will argue, I don't drink coffee, but I do love their tea. I love their black iced tea with a little bit of peach in there. So go try that. I highly recommend it. But a lot of people will argue that Starbucks does not have good coffee. And they're probably right. I've heard that from a lot of people, right? But people still go. It's not the best, it may not be the best coffee in your opinion, but people go. But look at this, the power of branding. Um, Starbucks is getting almost 3 times the amount for a cup of coffee that may not be everyone's favorite. But why is that? Right? That's because of the experience that they are giving to people. I can go into Starbucks and know that I can sit down with my laptop, right? I know I'm going into an atmosphere that's quaint, that's really organized. The color palettes look nice. I can easily find what I want, even though the lines are long. I'll sit in the line, right? Because of the experience that I'm getting. And it's not just the experience that you have, but a lot of times, and here's the power of branding. Some people only drink, they don't necessarily maybe like the drinks all the time, but they'll drink it because they know other people are drinking it, right? And so we just can't discount the power of peer support, right? And I would say maybe a positive peer pressure. Everybody else is drinking it, right? And so you want a level of that at your church. Everybody, oh yeah, it's a cool thing to go over to the church, and then we can move them, of course, beyond the whole cool phase, and that goes back to discipleship and to actually connecting. But don't discount the power of what peers are saying and what the wider audience is saying. That's the power of branding. Have you ever wondered why people will go to a church and we know the preaching isn't all there, right? May not be the best. The pastor may be a wonderful pastor, but preaching may not be their strong suit, but yet people still go, right? Or it may be a church with the best preaching, but we know the choir isn't exactly there. The choir is really not setting the preacher up real good, but we will still go. And why is that? We go because of the experience. That is the brand. And we'll go because we're connected to someone there. We'll go because we even hear God. It may not be the most eloquent words coming from the pulpit, but yet it resonates with the God in us, and it connects us to whatever that mission is there. You may go to a church where you may not like all of the leadership, but you like the fact that they're giving to the community, right? You like the fact that the leaders are accessible. You like the fact that there's something going on that you can plug your children into. And so all of that is the experience that's behind our brand. And all of that is what should fuel any graphics that we have. All of that is what should fuel what kind of type of content we put out on our different platforms that we may use. And so that is the power of branding. And so now that you know the power of it, how do you get to it? How do you as a church start thinking about this? Because as we mentioned before, branding is who you are. It's about whose you are. It's about what you represent. It's about your position in life. It's about what do you and others say about you? How do people feel when they come in contact with your organization? Right? And then we take all of that, and what goes into building a strong brand is that we, one, know who we are. We, two, are consistent, right? We fulfill expectations every time, or we at least try to. The church isn't perfect, right? But we also, that's a part of our brand that even when we mess up, right? We know we have an advocate with the Father, but so that there is some type of repentance, right? There's some type of atonement, and there's some type of room to get it right. And people need to know, okay, listen, we are a church and we aren't perfect, but here's how we're getting things right. If something happens, we don't all want, certainly there's some discretion to be had, but we don't want to cloak it all in secrecy. There has to be some transparency to let people know, okay, we missed the mark, but this is what we're doing to restore fellowship, to restore communion amongst one another. It has to be compelling, provides reasons for people to choose you over others, and your branding needs to be clear. People need to get you in a glance. It needs to be, when I see those arcs, those golden arches, we know that's McDonald's, right? And so when we see any type of representation of your brand or a flyer, we know that's you. I do a lot of design a lot of flyers for different churches, and I have people come to me and say, yeah, I know that was your work. I knew you did that, because they can see some consistency in the way I design. It may be fonts, it may be the way I place things, but people will begin to notice when they see something, oh yeah, that's them. And then that will invoke an experience. And so how do we get there? You have to go visit your mission and your value statement, right? Habakkuk 2:2. Write the vision and make it plain, right? And this is where we have to spend time really getting to know our church, really getting to know what it is that we really do in our community. And if you find that it's nothing, if you can't be positive, then therein lies the work. That's where we start and say, okay, well, we maybe haven't been the best representation of Christ. So where do we want to start? What do we want people to say about us, right? And this is where a lot of the work, this is grueling work. And it's not something that can be done in a year. It may take some time. I'm working with a team now it's taking some time. We have some new graphics up that we're working on, because we at least came to the point where we decided who we want to, how we want to represent ourselves. And so we're starting there, and then we're digging deep and say, okay, looking at all the touch points, all the places where we touch people, whether it's our front door, whether it's through our website, whether it's through us, where people are reaching out, are coming in contact with our brand through the different members that belong to our churches. How do we want them representing Christ, but not only just Christ, but our church? And so we have to go back to this mission and vision, and that's where we bring people in. That's where we bring the congregation in to really buy into this. Because if people don't buy into it, what you end up being is a nice looking church on social media, and then jacked up in person, basically, right? Someone said to me that this is a good time where small churches can appear as mega churches on social media, and you can, right? Because we're all virtual. Nobody sees our church. We can kind of in some ways hide how many parishioners we actually have, how many members are actually attending our churches, but the numbers don't lie, right? But we can put graphics up and make it seem like we're this big church, but what's beneath all of that? What happens when we go back into the church, right? What happens when we gather together? What happens when we meet you on the street? Is that a real representation of what you've been showing us on social media and everywhere else? So thinking about that, when you begin to sit down and work with different components of your church, think about what your brand characteristics are. Is your church more feminine, masculine? Are you more playful? Are you more serious? Are you more of a luxurious and affordable church? I mean, do I feel like I have to be decked out, right? When I come, do I have to have on a wide brim hat when I come? Is it going to cost me a lot? Am I going to feel okay if I just only have jeans to wear, if I only have shorts to wear? Am I going to feel okay being able to sit in front of my screen in sweats and tap into your church service? How am I going to feel? Is it affordable? Is it modern? Is it classic? Is it useful? Is it mature? And be honest with yourselves, right? That wherever you fall is fine. But then we have to look at where do we want to go? Where is God calling us to be? Next, then we build our brand, right? We look at where we are. Where do we want to go? Who's in our community? What type of spiritual growth do we want to see? And what type of numerical growth do we want to see, right? I'm big on the discipleship piece. That's why I love what LaKesha brought before us this morning, because I think that matters most than actually looking at the numerical growth in our individual churches, because we also need to look at numerical growth as it relates to the church worldwide, not just our individual churches. But building your brand, you want to look at where you are and where you are trying to go, right? And then that's where we begin to flush all this out in our collateral pieces, right? The logo, the flyers that we have, the way we begin to look at how we interact on social media. I'm going to see where I'm at on time. Okay, I think I have a couple more slides and then we'll get to some questions if anyone has anything. All right, so marketing on a budget, right? This is usually the place where people throw in the towel, or they hang it up. They say, oh, we don't have the budget for this because branding costs. But how do we pay for it, right? Most companies and corporations and organizations allocate a certain percentage of their budget to marketing. In reality, we know that our churches don't always have a lot of money to allocate in this area. They don't always have huge budgets, but you do have a budget, right? There are things that we have been spending money on. We buy bulletins. Look, we're not in the building anymore, so there's half of the marketing budget, of the branding budget right there, because we are now digital, so we don't have to worry about printing them and ordering them. Think about the things you spent on altar flowers, or different expenses we had when we were in the building, and different things we were purchasing. Those are things that you can reappropriate now or reallocate into a different area. So what I say, the answer is this: how do we pay for our branding, right? I'm saying marketing because I'm usually in that space. But how do we pay for the marketing and the branding? I would say you're already paying for it. You're already using the money. And so the real question is, how committed are we to the church's mission in this season? And what does that look like for us? How committed are we to reaching souls, reaching the lost? Right? And how important is that for us? Because if it's really important, then we find a way to do it. Right? If it's really important, we begin to pool our resources. We look for talent. We make the necessary mental adjustments to say, okay, this is important. The way we present the message, the gospel message, the way we present who we are, the way we tell people what it is that we do is important. So we have to put our money behind it if it's important. The Black church is known for putting our money behind what we think is important. That's how many of our churches got built. That's how many of our schools came to be, because we said these are the things that are important in our lives. And I know you're here today at this summit because you feel like you believe that excelling in these areas, excelling in discipleship and marketing and content is important if we're going to continue to be effective in ministry. And so I encourage you to be you, be bold, and be the church, and don't be scared. So let me give you a few 4 steps on how to put this all together. Define your brand, define your purpose, revisit your mission and your vision statement, determine how you want others to see you, what type of experience do you want to create? And those are the things that will inform your logos and your graphics. If you talk to any graphic designer, any person in that field that really cares about who you are, when they design something, they're going to ask you some background questions. They're going to ask who you are. That's what I do with all of my customers. I spend time looking through their social media. I spend time getting to know what it is that they do, right? Especially if I'm not just creating for, they just need a service flyer. But I think about those things, and I encourage and challenge them to think about those things, because your graphics should always convey them. And then step 2, develop a strategic plan. Define your target audience. Know the habits of that population. Create a team to help brainstorm. Involve all generations. You cannot do this without the help of all generations. And select up to 3 ideas that your church can reasonably implement throughout the year, and allocate those funds to do so. I want to issue a challenge to everyone here, right? This is the beginning of the year where a lot of us are setting our calendars, our events. Certainly, if you're on an itinerant schedule, you're in the middle of a conference year. But thinking about your calendar year. Think about the events you're going to do for the rest of the year, right? And then when you're thinking about your branding, infuse them into all of your events. And so we're having a typical men's or women's day, right? If we're having an event, some part of that ought to connect to your brand. It shouldn't just be isolated and stand alone as this is an event. No, what ways are we touching people? What ways is this drawing us back to who we are? Because those are different touch points where people are become familiar with your brand. And then determine your media outlets. What are you going to use? Social media, print media, newsletters, bulletins. Facebook, Twitter, that social media land is not the extent of what your brand should be or how you should communicate or introduce people to your brand. It's also the newsletters, it's the emails, it's the touch points throughout the week. Those are how people stay connected with you. And so get the word out, share your story, tell the world what you do. A lot of you are doing some amazing things in your churches, in your congregations, in your businesses, in your ministries, in your personal life. So get the word out, for that is our job. And before you get to the graphics, right? Everybody likes to look nice, and nothing wrong with that. But think about what's behind it. Think about what we're going to convey. Think about the meaning. Think about the experience that you want people to have when they come and see you, because that is what will last. Building that experience will last. Again, define who you are. You communicate and do it consistently. Let me give you a couple branding mistakes to avoid. Looking at someone else, let me stay right there, because now that we're in this pandemic and everyone is on social media, we're all looking around and say, okay, whose church got the most engagers? Who's checking their lives out? Whether everybody's numbers are at. But resist the urge to sound and look like everyone else, because this season too will fade. This season too will change, and what is left after that is who you are authentically. So be your authentic self. You may not master all the graphics right now, right? But you can master being yourself. You can master being a place where people come and their burdens are heard, or the things that are bothering them is heard, and someone cares. Avoid not understanding your target audience, not thinking long term. Okay, this is a process. It's work. Avoid lacking a sense of purpose. We don't come to church just to clap our hands and sing. There should be purpose built into every part of our service. I'm big on that, so I'm going to digress, because I can go for a minute there. And avoid neglecting social media. That's where people are. Bishop Bashton McKenzie mentioned that you need to have a footprint in this day and age on social media. Let me give you 2 tips and trends. Whenever I do workshops, I always like to do some forecasting based on some research I saw. And basically, here's where we're at. The future of branding is more personal. Resist the urge to follow all traditional norms. Embrace interaction, and video will continue to be king. Back in 2018, I presented a workshop, and I made the prediction that based on the forecast, based on some research, that video will be king. And look where we are, 2021, and people are still interacting with videos, right? Don't be afraid. I know I get nervous with doing videos as well. But a quick thing to note is I was looking at statistics on Facebook, and they reported that most people actually prefer looking at videos with no sound. And so nobody's worrying about your sound anyway. So go ahead and record that video. And then my encouragement to you is whatever you do, review it, evaluate, and try again. You may bomb the first time at this. Oh, well, you're learning, right? We're all learning. Nobody's perfect. So keep trying and then look at those things that aren't working and then try again and implement something new. And so I'm going to open up for questions. And let me just share my contact information. I am here to walk you through these steps. I do offer a consultation as well, not just for your branding in the future, but if you have an event and you want to say, okay, how can we maximize this experience? Not just we're just putting on something just to do it, not just putting on something just to have something in this virtual space. So we can say that, you know, at the end of the year, we had something, right? Everybody's zoomed out anyway. So if you're going to do something, it has to be something with purpose. And so I'm here to help you through that. And there's my contact information. And I also invite you to drop your contact information in the chat session so I can stay in contact with you. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing real quick and let me just check the chat and see where we're at, if anybody has any questions. Yeah, Solomon, it's the idea of having that cup. Yep, everybody wants that Starbucks cup. Even if you don't like what's in it, even if you take it home and put your own juice in it, it's the idea of having that cup with that logo. And you notice that even too when you go shopping somewhere, it's the idea of having those branded bags. But just know when you're carrying somebody's brand, you're carrying their philosophies, their theology, their ideologies, and we want people to carry ours too. So if you need to go, if your part of your marketing strategy is going to be to put your logo on a shopping bag or on a nice branded bag and give it to everybody who visits, or mail it to them, still mail stuff out even if we're in this virtual world, then go for it. I think that's a great idea. What do you, RJ Stevenson, what do you suggest for pastors who want to establish a personal ministry brand separate from the church? I think that's a great idea. I'm actually working with someone who's doing that now, and we're working through that process. I think it's good, you know, because everyone has their lanes, right? Your church requires something of you specifically, and there's some other areas of you that you're passionate about in ministry and that you want to be able to help to people and that you need to get out. And I think that's important. That's another outlet for us in ministry. And so I think sometimes pastors often feel confined to that one aspect of ministry. It's not one aspect, but you know, there's a certain role, there's a certain mode that you're usually in when you're pastoring, and there's some other areas that you're gifted in. And so I highly encourage you to seek after those. And you can certainly brand those parts. You can. And if you look at a lot of your celebrity preachers or mega church pastors, they have more than one stream of income, right? A lot of their followers in their church actually may have come by way of their personal ministries, by way of the books they've been publishing or the different outlets that they've been sharing what God has gifted them on. So yes, I definitely encourage that. I do work with persons who are looking to bring in their personal ministry separate from the church, and that is perfectly fine and okay. Thanks for defining what a brand is. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Brandon. See everybody. I want to make sure I get to everybody's comments. All right, guys, drop your emails in the chat so that I can stay in contact with you. If you have any questions, I do have those steps written in a PDF form that you can follow, and I'll send those out to you. And that you can keep. Let me encourage you. You can take a 15-minute breakout here after this session and join the networking as well. I do have a virtual booth if you have any more questions and you'd like to follow up with me there or find out what I do and what my processes are, then meet me there. I'll be there starting at 2 o'clock. All right, there are no more questions. Thank you, Carrie. If no more questions or comments, I'll put my contact information back up, and then I'll see you all later. And thank you for joining in, and I pray God's richest blessings upon you. in your ministries this year, and I know you will go far, especially because you're here. It shows you have a heart to reach the lost any way you can. So God bless you. Thank you.